And in other news, AI cloud provider Vercel announced late in 2025 that it closed its Series F round at a $9.3 billion valuation. The company's COO, Jean DeWitt Grosser, told Kristen Scholler how the company is using AI without losing its human touch. Take a listen.
Well, so the human touch is exactly the point. As long as I've worked in sales, there's reports that come out every year that talk about how an average seller spends about 30% of their time in front of customers. And I really believe that with AI, we're going to finally be able to move that from 30% to 70% and actually get folks back in front of humans. Particularly in the moment that we're in, decision making is tough. You often have 10 different players in a single category, and most of them are novel. So now more than ever, you actually want interaction with a human in order to help you think things through, de-risk decisions, and feel like someone's going to be there on the other side of a signature to actually help you implement and be successful. So a lot of what we're doing is taking the more mundane research, follow-up, content crafting out of the workflow so that you get more of the true human interaction.
Can you share an example, Jean, and how it changed things for the team day to day?
Yeah, so the big one that we've been most successful with is sales development that I just discussed. And so what this meant for us was you had 10 folks actually previously who would do a lot of, someone fills out our contact sales form, says, I'd like to talk to Vercel, and you would do a bunch of research and then follow up with them. That can now be totally automated. And so as a result, those 9 people got shifted into more outbound prospecting, which is harder to do. You've got to develop a much deeper hypothesis about the value that Vercel is going to provide to that company. You're moving into enterprises that have complex org charts, and so you've got to be more thoughtful about who to contact, how many people to contact, et cetera. So we've effectively enabled an entire team to just shift up the value chain and do a harder, more valuable portion of the sales cycle for us.
Talk to me about how Vercel is helping enterprises, like those traded here on the NYSE, use AI to scale.
We have an initiative that we're doing with enterprises that we're calling Agent on Every Desk. It sort of harkens back to the PC on every desktop of 20, 30 years ago, where once people thought it would be crazy that every single human would have a computer, and now we all have 5. We think we're in the same moment with agents, where most companies have 0, 1 agentic workflow going, but we actually think in the fullness of time, you're probably going to have multiple agents to every human. So what we're doing is going into enterprises and doing what I just outlined with the sales development use case, which is give me a use case where humans are doing relatively mundane, somewhat deterministic work, and we'll encode that in an agent. And while encoding it in an agent, we'll actually teach you in the trainer type approach to then do it yourself. And you'll then do the next 2 workflows, and we'll ride along with you in that capacity to help where you get stuck. And so the idea is basically, rather than saying, hey, we're going to go in, do some big bang transformation that I think very few companies have actually succeeded in, we're actually going to sort of start on the bottoms up and take these workflows one at a time. And then at a certain point, you probably have 100, 1,000, et cetera, of them done.
What do you think is most important to enterprises right now when it comes to building and using AI?
A couple of things come to mind. So first of all, the technology is still pretty new. So if you think of Vercel, we have a vibe coding application. It's called V0. In order to build V0, which now has millions of users, so it's one of the larger AI native applications out there, you couldn't actually get the technology, the infrastructure primitives that you needed off the shelf at one of your hyperscalers. So we had to build a lot of compute that's specific to AI, other infrastructure primitives. So the first thing is, as enterprises go to build these agents, there's a lot of work to do to go to a hyperscaler and stitch together the pieces that they have to actually efficiently produce that agent. So that's sort of thing one that Vercel is doing, is giving you a platform as a service, what we call self-driving infrastructure. So instead of your engineering team having to put together a bunch of components and configure things, you can get self-driving infrastructure off the shelf. The second part is security. So this is another big thing where vibe coding is a great example of it. everyone is diving in because it's producing such incredible results for both developers and actually non-developers. But a lot of the companies bringing AI native applications to market are themselves startups, and they don't have a history and a track record with security. Vercel has 10 years of history and serving global enterprises. So we've been able to develop an underlying security platform that actually preemptively ensures that folks don't make security mistakes. So an example of this would be our composite model in V0 actually actively looks for security mistakes that the AI would have let happen in that application and will auto fix them. And then similarly, IT departments are going to want the ability to ensure that you're really cordoning off a lot of these applications, not letting them access the public internet, and also in many cases not access other parts of your existing infrastructure. So that's another big thing that we're spending a lot of time on, because I think AI is sort of bringing on the ultimate wave of shadow IT.
Thanks, Jean DeWitt Grosser, and of course, Kristen Scholler for that interview.